Hey, welcome to week 3 of CIS 234 Front-End Web Development. My name is Dan Rusk. I'm an adjunct professor. I'm also the VP of Software Development at Thorntech. And as you see in my picture, this is your third time seeing my picture if you're following this series. So I hope you enjoy. So this week we're going to be going over navigation bars, Font Awesome, and an introduction to JavaScript. Navigation bars have become the common convention for providing top-level navigation on a site. So you can notice them everywhere when you start looking around for them. For instance, on W3 schools, we have this navigation bar at the top. And here we see another navigation bar on a CSS framework named Balma. You see they have icons with their navigation items in the top. And this makes it easy to immediately know what's available on the site. So let's look at the navigation bar and how it's actually built. So on desktop, the navigation bar looks pretty simple, right? The HTML is just a list of links. So in particular, it's an unordered list, and we just provide list items that have links inside of them. And that is our entire navigation. This will generate something like this once we put CSS to it. Later in the video, I'm going to show you how to apply CSS to these unordered lists to make them look like navigation bars, in particular on mobile. When we're building web apps, we need to think mobile first. So that includes this primary navigation bar that we're going to be adding to our site. Now, when people are using their mobile phones, they can't necessarily reach the top of the screen when they're holding the phone with one hand. And this is a problem. Websites should be easy to use. So we want to put the navigation bar within reach of that thumb. So let's see how to do that. Here I've started a project in WebStorm that just sets the HTML body to a main height of 100% and the body to a background of lawn green. So we're starting with this. So what we want to end up with is a navigation bar along the bottom that stays there even when we're scrolling. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the HTML5 nav element to create our navigation. Now inside of here we're going to use the navigation using unordered list and list items. So a list of links. So the first link we'll just put in here, we'll just reference pound or hash. And this one, this URL here just represents the top of the page basically. So it's not going to do anything when we click on it, and that's what we want to happen. So we'll just call this 1. Then we'll make a copy of it and create a few more links. Now top level navigation should be limited to between 3 and 5 items. If you have more than 5 items, you need to figure something else out for navigation to have all the spillover items. So let's see what we have so far. Alright, so we have our list of links here. This is all the HTML we're going to need for this example. So let's move on to the CSS. Now notice our unordered list has some browser agent styles in here where it's showing a bullet point next to each list item. We need to get rid of that bullet point. So we're going to go ahead and create a CSS selector that will select the unordered list inside the nav element and turn off the list style. And we'll go ahead and get rid of the margin and padding as well. And on the body itself, we will get rid of the margin. If we use a reset style sheet, then this would already be supplied for us. Let's go ahead and reformat this code and then view the update. So now we have no more bullet points. The next step is to get these to lie horizontally instead of vertically. To accomplish this, we're going to use the flexbox. So all we got to do is display this unordered list as a flexbox. We do that with display flex. Now, hopefully you've seen CSS Flexbox before in 137, but if you haven't, it's available on W3 schools. is very similar to the CSS grid that we learned. Back to our code, let's look at this, how this list looks now with display flex. Now we see our horizontal items, but they're all smushed up next to each other. Flexbox has a property called justify content that'll let us space them out evenly. It's called space evenly. So justify content space dash evenly. And when we do that, we'll see the list items span across the page now. Now let's add some coloring so we can see where our navigation items actually are. Now we notice right away that we set the background color to silver, but it's not spanning between the items here. So we need to grow these list items in the Flexbox. We can do that with the flex grow property on the list items. Just set it to 1. Now the list items span across the entire page. But you notice now that the links are not centered within the list item. Let's fix that. So we're going to display the list item as flex, and we are going to go ahead and center the content. Refresh our page, and now we see our links are back in the middle of each list item. When we inspect these elements with the Chrome Developer Tools, we'll notice something here. So the link itself does not span the entire list item. So when we go to click it, we can only click the actual word. So to fix that, we just need to expand that link. So we'll set the width to 100%, which will set it to 100% of the width of its parent element, which is the list item. So now when we refresh, we again have this link, and now we see it's spanning the entire list item, but now it's on the left side again. So let's fix that. So we can solve this the same way we solved the list item centering and everything like that. We can just display this link as a flexbox and justify the content to center. Now we see the link, and if we hover over it, we'll see that it spans the entire list item. So this navbar is pretty narrow. If we want thumbs to be able to click it, we need to make it taller. So since we want the anchor link to be clickable, we are going to go ahead and add some padding to this link. Now with padding, we can see the link is still clickable all the way around the list item, and things are looking good. So let's make these look a little bit more like navigation items rather than links. So we're going to remove the text decoration, which is the underline, and we're going to set the color to black. Now our links are looking a little bit more like a navigation bar. Let's make the hover show some differences between the three of these. So we're going to say the background color will change to steel blue. Now generally, these colors are all arbitrary. Work with a designer to really get some good colors. Now we can see the differences between the three tabs as we hover over them. And they're looking more like tabs now. We can call them tabs instead of a list of links now, right? So let's get these to the bottom of the screen. So now we just need to move our unordered list to the bottom of the screen. We're going to do that with the position fixed property. Now we need to specify that we want to put it at the bottom. If we do that, we now see our unordered list at the bottom, but it's not spanning the entire page. So let's make it span the entire viewport with setting the width to 100 VW, which is the viewport width. 100% of the viewport width here. Now this is looking pretty good. Font Awesome is a lightweight, scalable icon library that we can freely use, at least some of them. They keep some under the paid model, but the icons that are available for free are great, and they're great to work with. So how do we actually use these Font Awesomes? Let's go to how to use. So we're just going to use this CDN to import Font Awesome into our page, and this will make it super easy. So we're just going to copy this link and put it into our head. Now that this link is in the head, we can use Font Awesome. That's all there is to it. So let's go find an icon we'd like. So here we have a set of batteries. Let's go ahead and use these. So to use them, we're just going to click on the icon we'd like, and then down here we see some HTML that we can just put directly into our page. So let's go ahead and copy this code. Now we're going to add icons to our navigation. So I'm going to put the empty battery on this one. If we go to our site, we now see an empty battery next to the one. Now, mobile navigation usually has an icon, a large icon above some text. But what we see right here is right next to the text. To fix that, all we need to do is, since our anchor is a flex display, we can change the flex direction to column instead of row. We do that and we refresh. Now we see the battery is above the one, but our items are over on the left now. And it's because our justify content center is operating on a different axis now. Before it was operating on the row axis, so it's centering in the row. But since we changed the flex direction to column, justify content is now centering the content among the column. So we need to add align items to do the cross axis. So when we align the item center, we now see the batteries above the one. So let's change the styling a little bit so that the battery will actually show up larger than the text. So we'll navigate to, or use a CSS selector for the I element that we put in here inside the anchor, and change its font size to be larger than the text. And we'll go ahead and change the text size to be a tiny bit smaller. So let's go ahead and add icons for these two. So now our nav bar is looking like a real nav bar. JavaScript is a very interesting language, we'll say, and it's had an interesting history. It is now, one of the most important languages, right here, of today and tomorrow. That's because it's the language of the web. The client-side code, stuff that runs in the browser, is all running with JavaScript. If you think about it this way, HTML is the bones of your web application. CSS is the skin. It makes you pretty. And JavaScript is the muscles. It actually affects the behavior of everything else. Not only is JavaScript used on the front end, it's also used on the back end. So servers can run JavaScript through something called Node.js. So knowing JavaScript and being efficient with JavaScript, especially the newer flavors with ECMAScript, is very valuable because you can develop on the front end and the back end once you get the concepts down. JavaScript's main purpose when it was first invented was to change the HTML on the page and to respond to events. And events could be like a user could click on something, or they can type something in, or some other event could happen, such as the page loading. That could fire an event that JavaScript could consume. So for the introduction of JavaScript, we are going to use JavaScript in this way. We're going to use JavaScript to affect the classes of an element. So I set up a project very similar to the navigation bar, where we have an HTML body with a min height of 100% and a body with a margin of 0. So let's add an element to our body that the JavaScript can interact with. So we'll set a main, and then we'll put an article inside of here. And we'll just put some text in here from lorem ipsum. So let's view our page so far. So we're going to add some style to our article. We are going to display the width as 50% of the viewport width, and we're going to set the margin so that it will center. Now let's use JavaScript to add another class to this. Now when we write JavaScript, we want to be able to access the elements that appear in the HTML. Now if we put our JavaScript before those elements actually render, then it's not going to work. So we need to put our JavaScript after everything else. And where I prefer to put it is right before the closing tag of the body. So we can put a script tag right inside here. I'm going to use Control-L to reformat everything. And now we can write our JavaScript. So to access an element, the easiest way to do it is through an ID. So we can give our element here an ID. So we can go ahead and give the article an ID of main article. Now inside of our script, we can use document.getElementById. Inside here, we just put the main article. So now we can do many things to this main article. We could use the inner HTML and reassign what's inside there. So instead of having all this text, JavaScript can just change it to hello. Or one cool thing is the class list property. If we look at class list in W3 schools, this lets us add and remove and toggle classes from an element. See the various methods down here: add, contains, item, remove, toggle. So let's add a class to this. So we can call it, we'll add a shadow class. And we'll create a shadow class up here. We're just going to set the shadow selector to set a text shadow of, let's say, bisque, and we have to set a horizontal offset and a vertical offset. So let's go check out our text. Now you can see there is a shadow behind all the text. So we made it so that the shadow appears behind the text in JavaScript, but this didn't respond to an event. It's not interactive. It just set it right when the page loaded. So let's, instead of adding it when the page loads, let's respond to an event. Let's make it so when anyone clicks on the article, it'll add a shadow or take it away. So we're going to do that with an event listener. Now, JavaScript elements, the HTML elements where we're going to be working with, have this add event listener method that works really well with events. This lets you add multiple listeners for a single event for an element. So let's add a document.getElementById main article add event listener. Now here we need to specify the type of event we want to listen to. If you check W3 schools, you can find a whole list in their reference section of different events. But we're going to go ahead and listen to the click. Now, this event listener is expecting two parameters. It's expecting the type of event, and then it's expecting a function to execute when the event happens. Now with that, we are going to create a function, an arrow function, which is new to JavaScript, to put a function right here in place. Now this E stands for the event, and this arrow means we are going to write a arrow function here. So now we can write some code. Now the only code we're going to write is this code that we put down here. We're going to go ahead and cut it out and put it up here. Now instead of saying add, we're going to toggle the shadow whenever the main article is clicked. Let's see what that happens with that. I'm going to refresh, and now we'll click the article, and we see whenever we click it, the shadow appears, and when we click it again, the shadow disappears. So now we have interactivity using JavaScript. So this week we talked about navigation bars and how it's just a list of links plus CSS, and using that plus the CSS3 flexbox, we can really create some easy navigation bars. Font Awesome is a great library of icons we can use that's commonly used across the industry. And JavaScript is the muscle of our application to the HTML bones and the CSS skin. All right, that's all for this week, and I'll see you all next time.